intuitive to so many of like the way that we've been trained to think about fitness. So I'm digging the whole high intensity thing. Well, ready. You are in for a treat again. We're bringing Tanner Guzy. He's the chief patriarch in the room next door. He's been with 21 since 2016, and he wrote the book, The Appearance of Power, which I think everyone needs to get. You would really enjoy that. I believe it's for sale out front. And what else can I say? This man needs no introduction. I just want to bring him to the stage as fast as I can. Put your hands together for Tanner Guzy.
Okay, we good to go? Hey, there we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start over again for the sake of the recording. Good morning. I'm excited to be here and to talk to you guys today. I've loved being over at the Patriarch Edition. It's fun to do that, but I love having a chance to come over here and hang out with you guys as well, because the main thing that we have in common is this desire for self-development and self-improvement. And one of the things that we come up against with this, and I hesitate to even talk about this because even just bringing this in a little bit can kind of sneak in a little bit of a victim mindset. And I hate victim mindsets. And I assume you guys hate it too. That's why you're here. The whole idea of I'm moral because I'm more picked on than somebody else, or that makes me a better person or anything. It's ugly and terrible and disgusting. And so I hate to even kind of segue into this way, but to some extent, we have the odds stacked against us. We know that. We know that there are things that happen on a macro level and there are things that happen on a micro level that are designed to make it so that we as men in the 21st century are buried and we have either too much fear or too much complacency or too much anything else to actually realize the best versions of ourselves. And one of the things, ironically, that most of us fall victim to isn't stuff like men are bad, or it's the feminism stuff or anything else like this, but it's the false god of authenticity. I hate that word. I hate that word, and I know that's going to get me some crap because there are a lot of men here that will use that term this weekend. A lot of my best friends, a lot of the guys that I love and respect that I've been associated with this convention for years, use that term, and granted, they use it in a different way. But authenticity, the way that it's spun to us by the majority of the world, is designed to keep us complacent. It's Timmy with his little Cheeto dust on his fingers playing World of Warcraft in his basement, and I'm just being myself. This is just the best version of me. Or it's some edgelord who's anonymous on Twitter creating these bogus memes and thinking that by doing this, he's saving the West because this is the best that I can do. Anything else is too risky, and so this is the way that I'm going to do it. Authenticity, the way that we've been given it now, is designed to keep us complacent. It's designed to keep us passive. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because what are we supposed to actually aspire to? What is our ambition supposed to lead us to? We've killed God, right? The idea of believing in a God or in any sort of pantheon of gods or anything else like that has been killed by the very mundane, boring world of science, because we've created this false dichotomy of the idea that religion and myth and the excitement about stories and then understanding the actual functional nature of nature, that somehow those are antithetical, which they're not. But we've been given that false dichotomy, and so we've killed God and myth and legend and aspiration in that way. We've killed it as far as, who are the people that we're supposed to look up to? Celebrities? Guys who play dress up and pretend and have a camera pointed at them, and that's who we're supposed to worship? That's who we're supposed to aspire to? It's a joke. Our warrior class has turned into sports heroes that spend more time whining about getting kicked in a foul ball or anything else than actually being warriors, and this is all by design. so that we don't have any heroes to actually look up to. And so what happens when all of our gods are dead? Who becomes God? I do. You do. You become your own God. You start to worship yourself. And when you're a God, when you're the thing that is omniscient and omnipotent and omnipresent, then why in the hell do you need to change? Why? That's blasphemy. The idea that you need to change is blaspheming against your own godhood. And none of this is happening consciously. It's all happening very deep within. But this is what the world tells us, that I'm going to follow my truth, or you do you, or as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, I don't really care. It's all designed to keep us complacent. It's all designed to make us a god of our own creation, and the last thing that a god needs to do is change. And you and I are all pretty pathetic gods. I'm a terrible god, and so are you. What we need to do is get rid of this terrible, ridiculous notion of complacent authenticity and embrace ambitious authenticity. So how do you do that? What does that even look like? Especially because, you know what sucks is it comes with a whole lot of embarrassment. Because you know what that is? It's LARPing. It's live action role play. It's deciding that I'm going to create a set of ideals, or I'm going to embrace another set of ideals that's been created by somebody else, and I'm going to pretend to get there until I can actually get there. It's learning to play the piano and learning how to actually plunk out a few notes on the keys, thinking audaciously and ambitiously that you actually have the ability to get to the point where you can play in front of people and you can write your own music and you can create masterpieces. That is the kind of ambitious authenticity that we need. And it doesn't mean that you all have to go out and start playing the piano. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and start doing anything, because this is where the idea of actual authenticity comes from. Because what we're after is the ideal versions of who we are, not the current versions of who we are. And that doesn't mean that you have to hate the current version of who you are, but you shouldn't embrace it. You shouldn't be content with it. You shouldn't be complacent with it. Now, one of the ways that we get tricked into this, and again, this is another one of the ironies of the modern world, is that we hear about all these different terms that just get twisted to these tiny degrees, and then that little twist completely changes the meaning, and then we're off in no man's land, and we're totally screwed thinking that we're doing the right thing. One of the ways to actually develop this ambitious authenticity is through self-awareness. Now, I was just recently listening to a psychologist who's done studies on this, thousands of case studies and things like this over the last years, and what they've concluded is that somewhere between 90 and 95% of people in the world think we're self-aware. We think we have a pretty good idea of who we are and what our strengths and weaknesses are and stuff like that. But the reality is there's only like 10 to 15% of people who are actually self-aware. And so most of what we tell ourselves, most of what we're being loyal to, most of our authenticity is actually one big lie. So that's what makes it even worse. Is not only are we not being authentic to the best version of ourselves, we're not even smart enough or honest enough or aware enough to be authentic to a real version of ourselves. We're being authentic to a watered down, cheapened, false version of who we are. It's no wonder so many men are lonely or miserable or terrified or complacent or anything else, because we have these two working against us. Now, thankfully, self-awareness is one of the easiest things that we can start to build and we can start to establish. And thankfully, there are two different types of self-awareness. The first one is your internal self-awareness. And this has to do with things like, what are your convictions? What are your morals? What's your relationship with yourself? What's your relationship with the idea of this is what my potential is, or this is where I want to be? What are the things that energize me versus the things that drain me? All of this kind of stuff. This is internal self-awareness. The second type is external self-awareness. And that's basically, how do I show up to the rest of the world? What do I look like? How do other people perceive me? What are the images that I portray? What is my body language or my vocal tonality, or what are all these other things like? And what is the overall impression that that gives? Now, one of the things that's incredibly fascinating is that these two types of self-awareness are completely disconnected from each other. You can be almost 100% internally self-aware and be completely obtuse to your external awareness and your external self. Or you can be completely externally self-aware and have no idea who or what you are internally. Right? You think about people who And honestly, a lot of this even comes down to a lot of male and female dynamics, where you have a lot of men who are very internally self-aware. I know who I am, I know what I want out of life, I know what my morals are, I'm going to stand by my convictions, and all of that is very, very admirable. And that's important. And then they're completely unaware of the fact that none of that actually comes across, or that they don't portray themselves that way, that nobody trusts them when they say that, nobody would even give them the benefit of the doubt of that being that belief. And then what's really hard is that actually re-feeds back into their own perception of whether or not they can be authentically or ambitiously authentic to attaining that. On the other hand, and again, mostly it's men who fall into that camp, and on the other hand over here, you have people who are very socially fluid and fluent, and they're very capable of being able to understand conversations and nuance, and I'm perceived this way by this group, and other people need me to be this way, and this is where you get marketers and other people, and for the most part, a lot of women fall into this group. But then they have no idea who or what they are internally, what they want, what they believe in, what they stand for, what actually matters to them. And so they're just people pleasers. These are the nice guys that Dr. Robert Glover talks about. It's the people who think that as long as I'm aware of the way the rest of the world perceives me, then it doesn't really matter. So I don't have to, it's icky and it's scary, and I don't want to think about any of this internal stuff. Or you've got the guys who are over here that's like, oh, as long as I know what I stand for, none of this stuff even matters. And you need to have both. We need to be able to have both, because we don't live on islands. We're not completely isolated sociopathic creatures that don't depend on other people, nor are we completely sociopathic creatures that don't have any internal sense of who we are, what we are, and we just let the crowd determine what our value is, or what we should be doing, or what we should be standing for. And if you fall into either one of those camps, you need to correct that. You shouldn't let the rest of the world determine your internal self, nor should you let your strength and your convictions of who you are internally determine what the rest of the world should be. You should be able to work with both of these. And society used to be set up in this way. You go back to times, ancient Roman culture, different things like that, and they were more over here as far as the external versus the internal. These were honor cultures. Who you were on the inside really didn't matter that much, as long as you followed the proper script and you were able to do the right things. This is where like dueling culture and stuff like that comes from. Integrity wasn't really a term that mattered as much. It didn't matter. It was not low status or gauche or immoral to be somebody who was different on the inside than you were on the outside, because all that mattered was, did you act honorably on the outside? And that was a very big social function, and it was all thought of that way. Then society started to change, and we moved into a dignity culture, where what we needed was the two to align. We needed to be able to have the internal and the external line up. And it wasn't that you were putting on a mask or putting on a facade, but you actually were a man of integrity, and that these two did align. And then what have we done since then, as we've killed our gods, we've killed our heroes, we've killed everything else, is we've moved away from anything mattering as far as the external self, and all that matters is who I am on the inside. You can't judge me. You don't know me. That's subjective truth. I'm living my truth. None of what you think actually matters. So we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. So I don't know about any of you, but I don't want to live in a purely honor-based culture. I want to be able to trust that a man is the same on the inside as he presents himself to be on the outside. But I can absolutely tell you that I don't enjoy living in a culture in which all that matters is this authentic, pathetic version of ourselves that doesn't matter anything else as far as how it relates to other people or what's on the outside. That it's just this. What we need to be able to do is maintain and build an integrity culture. That we look at who we are both internally and externally. Now, what I do for a living, one of the ways that I help men do this is I teach guys how to dress better. And what does that mean? A lot of guys are probably thinking, okay, Tanner's going to say that I need to wear suits, or that I need to have a button-up shirt with a collar, or I need to dress more formally, or I should wear these colors to make that work. And none of that's actually true. It may work for some of you, but that's not actually the case as far as what I do. What I do is I help you see the value of this external version of yourself,